probably wondering how in the world theism and atheism can both be rational. Because if theism is true, then atheism is false, and if atheism is true, then theism is false. In these terms, theism and atheism are opposites, so you would think that the one that is true is rational, and the one that is false is irrational. The reason that theism and atheism are both rational is a highly technical result that follows from the nature of knowledge and the concept of God. I'll give you an idea of what the technical argument entails, but you'll have to see my book for the details because they're too technical to convey in this video. Let's begin with the concept of God. I'm going to invite you to pause the video on the next slide and define the concept of God, but first let's consider a few preliminaries. In order to define the concept of God, we must identify the essential features of a monotheist God such that a being that has these features is God, and if any feature is omitted, then the being in question is not God. More specifically, we must do this for a monotheist God that is independent of any particular religion, because we want to identify the pure essence of what the concept of monotheist God entails. To illustrate, we may believe that God loves people, a prominent theme of Christianity, but it's obvious that the pure essence of the idea of a monotheist God does not include the feature of such love, because we can readily conceive of a monotheist God who does not love people. In fact, monotheists can agree on the existence of a monotheist God while disagreeing on the non-essential features of that God, as in the different conceptions of God in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In this context, I invite you to pause the video on the next slide and define the concept of God. I identify two essential features of any monotheist God as follows. Under monotheism, God is the sole source of reality. God is the sole source of everything that exists. There is no other ultimate source of anything. Under monotheism, God is also an intelligent free agent, having intelligence like that of human intelligence, but greater as is commensurate with creating the universe and all that it contains. So God is the sole source of reality and is an intelligent free agent. Now, a bit of reflection reveals that for God to exist means that reality is an intelligent free agent. That is, as the sole source of reality, God is ultimately all that exists. As the sole source of everything that exists, God is ultimately all that exists. Putting this in spatial terms, God permeates space because ultimately God is all that exists. It would be irrational to propose that God could create something that is spatially distinct from himself. Putting it in temporal terms, if God were to become distracted for a moment, the universe would cease to exist. The universe continues to exist because God ceaselessly maintains this existence. So, we have the following. For God to exist means that reality is an intelligent free agent. In an earlier video, I showed how we can prove that reality is indeterministic, so the free part of intelligent free agent has been established. What remains to be established is the intelligence part of free agent. That is, what remains to be established is that reality has an intelligent mind. But if reality has a mind, it's obviously of great intelligence, so what remains to be established is that reality has a mind. Let's state this in proof terms. To prove the existence of God reduces to proving that reality has a mind. How can we prove that reality has a mind? To see how, ask yourself why you believe that another person has a mind. To be specific, why do you believe that I have a mind? I know that I have a mind because I directly observe it, but you can't observe my mind, so why do you believe that I have a mind? I invite you to pause the video on the next slide and answer the questions. Of logical necessity, a person's mind is private, so it is logically impossible for one person to observe another person's mind. The reason is that in order to observe another person's mental activity, you must experience it for yourself. In order to experience for yourself, you must be that person. To illustrate, in order to observe another person's pain, you must experience it for yourself. And in order to experience it for yourself, you must be that person. Since it is logically impossible to observe the mind of another person, why do we believe that they have a mind? What is the rational basis for believing that another person has a mind? I invite you to pause the video on the next slide and answer the questions. It turns out that in order to answer these questions, we need to review what knowledge entails. We recall from the video on knowledge that knowledge is given by the simplest, most accurate model for predicting our observations. If we could observe the mind of another person as we can their body, then we would assume that they have a mind so that we could more accurately predict their behavior, in particular the behavior of their mind. But since it is logically impossible for us to observe the mind of another person, we don't assume that another person has a mind in order to improve the accuracy of predicting their behavior. Rather, we assume that another person has a mind in order to simplify our model for predicting their behavior. Thus, the reason that you assume that I have a mind is not so that you can more accurately predict my behavior, but so that you can simplify your model of humans by assuming that all humans are like yourself in having a mind. In order to clarify what this entails, in part 2 I'll present an illustration.